All right, let's get the show on the road. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Torn Tuesday, and it is a very special day. I've got my golden jacket on. And Cliff,
Do
why is today special?
you know what? It was a quarter of a century ago when this ancient planet was not quite so ancient. It was 25 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, that a little website started up to bring you news and analysis, gossip and information about J.R.R. Tolkien and some crazy little zombie movie director who was down there in New Zealand doing something. We didn't know what the heck was going on, but there it all began. The organic moment of the birth of the OneRing.net. It was brought together by a wonderful, merry band of travelers and uh, idealists, writers, wonderful folks who brought their love of J.R.R. Tolkien right to the web. And we're talking Web 1.0, because that's what the internet was. Is it still safe to call it Web 1.0? Will anybody of a generation younger than me know what I'm talking about? You guys, before you could log into your AOL login screen, okay? We're talking way back in the Wayback Machine. The OneRing.net is now celebrating its 25th anniversary, and we welcome you all once again to our lovely little weekly corner of the internet. This is Torn Tuesday. I am joined by my producer, co-host, and bon vivant man about town. That's Justin Sewell right over there, and also with us, one of the guys who was the original founders, one of the original four people were the founders of the OneRing.net. We're also joined by Chris Parada. And,
Howdy, howdy.
back in the day, it was Kalasuri, and I was Quickbeam because we all took on nicknames to,
That's what you
publish our
did.
stories online.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what you did in version 1.0 of the internet.
Right.
Yeah, we did. We
That
did.
doesn't happen anymore. No one really chooses aliases to remain and not like completely anonymous. It was a very fun time to be completely anonymous, by the way,
It
back then.
was. Yeah.
Yeah, I,
So
I felt
big
so
celebration.
weird because I come into the community and I don't have any clever name because I hadn't read the books. I'm just Justin, and everybody has different names: Zoanin, LSR, stuff I have nothing, and I'm just Justin. I'm the odd man out with with a normal modern name.
Well, I mean, it is sort of a good place to start only because I can't believe it's 25 years ago. You had to say quarter of a century. It's also the late 1900s, you know. You can also think of it that way.
The late
Uh,
20th century.
I like 1900s. It makes it sound like we were on wagons and coming across the prairie. But I'll tell you, it was such a different. If you think about the differences between now and then,
Hmm.
it's pretty darn significant. Back then, it wasn't about me. It was about my alias I made up, right? Like
Hmm.
this random name. In my case, the name was a misspelling of a X-Files episode that Kalasuri came from. That's where
Hmm.
that came from. So like it's such a different vibe today, and not many people are and well, not to mention it was the Wild West. You could do whatever you wanted. You could influence the entirety of a gigantic multi-million-dollar production from your little office in the middle of Penn State University, and that's how the One Ring began 25 years
Amazing.
ago.
And the One Ring has become this community. And before we like dive into like how this all started, I just want to give the greatest hits. And this isn't a complete list, but the One Ring has hosted Oscar parties that were on the front page of all the newspapers as the hottest party in town. We had our own convention that toured the country called Orc, the One Ring Celebration, featuring
And Elf.
Hmm.
that's right. And
There was Elf too. Yes, yes.
we
East.
pub
What was the Elf one, Cliff? I forget what the name of that one stood for. It was in Florida or something, right?
What did ELF stand for?
enchanted. I don't.
Some, God.
So we had our own convention.
Extremely Literary Fellowship. That's what it stood for.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Extremely Literary Fellowship. Let's just say that that's what that was. Okay.
We've published some periodicals, like newsstand things that were in every 7-Eleven in the country. We've published 2 or 3 books called The People's Guide to J.R.R. Tolkien.
We did.
Based on articles that were in Green Books, published on a category of articles that were published on the site. Correct, Cliff?
Yeah.
A collected edition, not an absolute omnibus that was comprehensive, because it included brand new items that were written for the book itself, as well as being a useful compendium of some of our best authorship that we had at the Green Books section of our website, which is now called the library.
Yeah, the library.
Yeah.
I just want to quickly point out in the chat, multiple people went to Elf, and it was in Jersey. So, does anyone remember what Elf stood for? I don't remember. I don't remember what I ate for breakfast, let alone what happened 20 years ago. So,
all right, we got books.
That's
we got
right, Paul. There's, that's Paul Vincenti in the YouTube chat. Lovely man, wonderful musicians. Emerald Rose, everybody remember how wonderful the band Emerald Rose was?
Yes.
They played at so many of our wonderful events. And he said, I first met Cliff at Elf. Oh, my goodness.
Great. All right, so we had 2 conventions. We had a couple books, some periodicals. We had Oscar parties. We produced an award-winning documentary called Ringers, Lord of the Fans, that documented the history of fandom. That you see.
I had almost forgotten. Just a couple of days ago was Terry Pratchett Day, a day where so many of us celebrate the wonderful literature and his legacy, because, Terry Pratchett is a dear, dear friend of the Tolkien community. And we were actually one of the last, fandoms to interview him before he passed away. So tip of the hat to, by the way, we also interviewed excuse me. Yes, it was David Carradine. David Carradine was in his Kill Bill jacket. He had just gotten back from shooting locations with Quentin Tarantino in China, and he told the funniest little expose, kind of scandalous story about he wanted to be Aragorn in the 1970s version of The Lord of the Rings. And he went all the way to Ralph Bakshi's production office to petition that he get cast in the role of Aragorn. And we had these great interviews with Clive Barker and who's the gentleman who directed Almost Famous? You know that man. What's his name?
He's almost famous, though.
He's almost famous. Yeah.
It's terrible of me to do that.
Cameron Crowe.
Cameron Crowe. Thank you.
The fact that I know that and you didn't is
my brain.
Disturbing.
I have some brain cells left, just a couple of brain cells left. If I can rub them together, I can get a spark, maybe. Just a little spark. But yeah, a little set of interviews where people from the world of rock and roll, literature, people from Oxford academia, and a lot of actors and pop culture people just talking about how much they love and respond to J.R.R. Tolkien. It was a fascinating project to work on.
And equally as important, and this is a good example of how the One Ring has maintained the same type of influence, is that in addition to all of your celebrity interviews, Cliff, the documentary features interviews with fans at Comic-Con. And I remember you guys building a little video booth in the middle of the floor at Comic-Con. Kyle, sorry, do you remember this?
I do. Wasn't it part of the sideshow booth? Or the tour? It was part of the whole booth.
We were annexed into the sideshow booth. We were part of their floor space. And we had built a confessional. The confessional was supposed to be a chance for us to get not just direct footage of interviewing fans and saying, hey, what's on your mind? What do you love about Tolkien? Instead, we had a cardboard standee of Elijah Wood as Frodo, and you'd be locked inside this quiet booth where you wouldn't hear all the crazy outside noise of the convention and all the blinking lights and all the distractions. You could close the door, and you could stare into the eyes of Frodo and confess right to the camera what it was that you loved about the books, the stories, music, the poetry. It's a fascinating way, and it worked. It allowed people to really unlock some of the things that they wouldn't have said, because that style of using a confessional allowed people to just say, oh, okay, the door's shut. I'm in here by myself. I can say exactly what I want to say. And we got some interesting confessions, some very
Yeah.
interesting things that people talked about.
Those would
People
make
talk
great
about
TikToks about now.
the therapeutic quality. There were people who were saying, I've been struggling with depression and my weight or other things, and they say on camera that the healing happened to them in a remarkable and spiritual way from reading, deep diving into J.R.R. Tolkien. There was some
We're still
fascinating
getting comments about
aspects of
that.
that.
Like
Yeah.
this week on our Instagram comments and Facebook, there were people saying, "You guys got me through a dark time. I found this community, and everybody was so
Mm.
welcoming. All these strangers on the
Hmm.
internet, and and
Hmm.
and so we this community, helps people get through those dark times, just as the movies and books have done
And
that for years."
we're also responsible for marriages. Our little live stream show that you and I have been doing, Justin, for so many years has actually led to people within the community chatting, which led to falling in love, which led to beautiful marriages and families and babies and a lifetime of love and things created in the community that just happened because we were the OneRing.net. It really shouldn't be overlooked, the far-reaching things that have happened in our community, as much as us having picnics and parties and things like that. But there's been a lot of other real meat and potatoes stuff that has felt like a legacy has been built over all this
So,
time, really.
Kalasuri, did you ever envision that all of this would happen because you bought
Oh
the
yes,
domain?
exactly this. Exactly this. Yep, that's exactly what I would.
There was a master plan. You had a business plan and
I had a business plan.
milestones.
I wasn't a snotty computer geek at a lab in in the late 1900s. People had to go to a lab to use a computer. Just there were personal computers, but they weren't quite as powerful. And no,
No, I
no,
was
it's
using a
not.
Commodore 64 at the time that I started
Right.
writing for the OneRing.net. No, I'm
Of,
kidding. I'm kidding.
of course not. Right. This was not. I've often said, I still am. I mean, I got a lot of Star Wars in my background. I'm still Star Wars fandom was my big thing when I was growing up, but I was always a literary Tolkien fan. And I had read the book so many times. And when I had first run across one of, I think it was Zoannon's posts with Erica's photos of, hey, they're filming in the Lord of the Rings in New Zealand. My immediate thought was, well, I'm watching all these updates on theforce.net about the next Star Wars movie. Why don't we have this? Where's the site that's doing this for Lord of the Rings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what I envisioned. Just doing theforce.net, but for the Lord of the Rings. I always give them props because they were the first, really, in my experience, the first fan community that was doing this kind of stuff, just gathering people together. And so we just happened to time it well, really. And then
Is that why you chose the OneRing.net instead of the everpopular.com?
Yes. .net. Well, I think .com was registered before us. I think
it was.
But the .net was meant to be. It's funny now as a expert marketer, I could say it was branding. Like it's like a branding association, right? The Force.net, the OneRing.net, right? It was.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to make that parallel between the communities.
So that's what it was. That's really what it was.
I fell on it more than that wasn't purposeful. I can look at it now and be like, that's what my brain was triggering on. I couldn't have explained it to you at the time. But that's how we started. I just reached out to Erica and Zoannon and said, hey, I got a buddy that I play some MUDs with, multi-user dungeons on Telnet. I don't know if you remember those, but that was where Corvar came in and Bill came in. And so, we tag teamed and built that up. And very soon after, Cliff was on board. And it was pretty exciting in those early days because it was very much the Wild West and very much young, stupid people. I read a few of my emails from those early days. And boy, I'm a stupid idiot. Like just straight up like, what world were you living in, you egomaniac, whatever? Like, it was pretty impressive to look back at yourself at like 20 something and be like, wow, I
So
really don't want to meet.
you weren't in LA yet? You bought the
No, I was in
domain in
No, I was at Penn State. I was working on I was working at Penn State post going to Penn State at a high-end computer lab because I was a digital media major. 3D animation, Toy Story inspired me and all this stuff. And so I was working in this lab, and I was the guy in the back, right? The joke on Saturday Night Live, like move, like, hey, printer's not working, move. That was me, right? That was me coming up and helping people, really just getting it done to go back to my making of the OneRing.net. So that was me back then.
so in an interesting coincidence, you buying the OneRing.net from Pennsylvania. I think I met you maybe 6 months or a year later.
When we moved to LA, when I moved to LA, it
when
was
you moved
not till
to
2001 when I moved to LA.
and you had you were a Star Wars fan, so we traveled in the same Star Wars group.
Yeah.
As you were in Pennsylvania buying the domain and setting up this website, I'm in LA in line for Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, for 6 weeks. We got a lot of press camping out for Star Wars for 6 weeks in front of the Chinese theater. And
I was camping out with you, Justin. Yes.
by coincidence, I was in line with a couple guys named Marcus and Jonathan Watson, a couple brothers from here in LA.
Yep.
Marcus and Jonathan Watson were using the internet that we had in line to buy a domain from the Boulevard called theonering.com. So at the same time that you're doing this in Pennsylvania, I'm sitting next to the guys that are creating theonering.com.
That's really crazy.
How funny.
Crazy small world. All us geeks. Yeah, it's crazy. It was neat though. Back then, I really do miss the way the internet was then. Today, the internet sucks. I'm sorry, everybody. I mean, the internet is nowhere near. I think it sucks.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a tremendous amount of suckage that you have to navigate around to even get to any of the good stuff or the normal stuff. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Back then, you hey, you want to look something up? You found it. A. And you got an answer. B. Like it was unlike today. It's like, oh, can I get through 12 billion ads? Is this site just a SEO site that'll just drive me to something that doesn't really tell me what I want? Am I clickbaiting on this? Because I really want to, there's just so much. It's so complicated today versus back then it was very one-to-one. Like, hey, you wanted to find out if Balrogs had wings, right? Well, someone wrote a cool article on the One Ring about it. You searched for it, you found that article, and you could then communicate with people in a forum about it, right? Or IRC. Back then we had IRC, which Discord is basically the IRC of that time, right? So it was simpler. It was simpler times, right, Cliff? It was simpler times.
Well, I remember
you know what? Here it comes. I'm gonna say it. Chris, you haven't aged a day. There you go. I had to say it. Sorry.
I've been digging through some old photos. I won't embarrass you all with all the photos because we all look different. But I remember the first thing that really put Torn on the map in real space, in meat space, was I think the One Ring was inspired by the lineup for Star Wars, and for the Two Towers release, we camped out for 2 weeks in front of the Vista Theater.
Yes.
In Hollywood, California, and it was raining, and it was lining up in December. It's way different than lining up in May.
Oh yes,
it wasn't as fun, and we never did it again. But that's where a lot of people started meeting. But I bring this up because that was the first time that I, as a fan, really saw the power of the One Ring start to form because. I believe you guys brought a special guest to just a regular theater that we'd camped out in front of. This wasn't a premiere. This wasn't studio sanctioned. But
Mm-hmm.
next thing I know, like we're walking into the theater, and Cliff and everybody is crowded around a guy in a white blazer. Uh, and someone wrote on a piece of paper the word circus, CIRCUS. And I'm like, yeah, that's a circus over there. Yeah, it really is a circus. But I had no idea
No way.
how did you guys end up bringing Andy Serkis to a fan screening in 2002?
Well, back then, and Cliff, correct me if I'm wrong, he wasn't a known entity amongst many, but we had connections with him through Ian, right? Wasn't it through all
Through
that?
Ian, yeah. Mm-hmm. And well, literally, something should be said about the McKellen.com connection.
Yes, that was a huge, huge connection.
The OneRing.net was largely supported in its early days by the fact that I was also working part-time as an administrative assistant for Keith Stern, who is the webmaster and creator of the wonderful, wonderful destination on the web, McKellen.com. And yeah, so I actually, there was letters and notes and emails and secrets that we have kept for years still. And, there was Ian trying to get some things past New Line Cinema, and Ian also being very invigorated by the attention that the fans were giving. And his website actually had the Gray Book, where he started writing his own wonderful production diary notes.
Yeah, it was a diary. It was what
Yeah.
it was so not. I mean, people think that's so
Mhm.
common now. That was not common
Nope.
then.
And so there was Ian McKellen's production diary, the Gray Book, and there was just at one point Ian got in trouble for posting a famous silhouette. And it was not a picture of him, it was just a picture of his silhouette with the tall pointy hat.
I remember
And
that.
it caused such a stink, such a ruckus.
Well, it's
And
because those were the days of Ain't It Cool too. So Harry would
Yes.
pick that up, right?
Yeah.
And he would, a lot of the Wondering success was Harry, that guy, but
yeah,
doing
who is persona non grata now.
right,
Yes.
posting a lot of our stuff, on his site that
Mhm.
got a lot of that traffic. Because back then too, like Ain't It Cool News was the place to go for anything related to geek movies, and geek movies were big business starting at the late 90s into the 2000s. We were dictating a lot of what was being made in Hollywood. And so combine both McKellen.com, Ain't It Cool, often talking about the One Ring, McKellen.com being so novel, right? And Ian being such an advocate for the fans. Like all of that combines into that special sauce that really helped the One Ring. And our, the other part of it was we were never in it for money. Like that's the really crazy part of the One Ring is we were making thousands and thousands of dollars that went directly to schools in New Zealand for buying books.
Yeah.
Like nobody
a literacy
took a
fund.
paycheck at any point. So it's like, it also, unlike the internet of today, right, where everything is highly commercialized in some, either by the platform you're on, or you're always trying to get more likes and views and whatever so that you can get some revenue from that platform. This is not the case back then. People lived and died on ad revenue. And for us, we fortunately were able to pay our bills for our server and the traffic we got. And then the rest was able to be sent directly to like people that needed help. And so Ian loved that message. When you're working in that type of way, people want to work with you because they know you're in it for just the love of Tolkien and the love of literature and the love of reading, right? These are all amazing things that we need to keep doing. And even just this year, we still donated money. We don't make that much money anymore, folks. Like it's not that much that we're donating, but we still do it. And no one's taking a paycheck. In fact, I think we made a little extra with like something like Comic-Con on t-shirts, and we had to figure out what to do. Like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? So that was very different than a lot of times most organizations are focused on that profit or who's making what. Even in, we were talking about in a cool like that whole thing, only certain people were making tons of money and everyone else is working volunteer. Like that was never the case, and that's why the Wondering stayed together. That's why we've always had a stable of people, is because no one's physically making more than anybody else. It's this
Hmm.
equalized community. So that was a relatively novel as well.
Can you explain
Indeed.
how we've had hundreds of people raise their hand and volunteer in different aspects. Can you explain how that kind of process came about? Like, you guys have started the website. Like, at what point, did anyone that raised their hand, you're like, cool, you can help do that, or like,
Yeah, pretty much. That was, and you take your bruises on the way, right? Um,
Hmm.
you 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 want to you think everybody is going to be helpful and positive, and fortunately for the Wondering, in the vast majority of the cases, 95% of the time that has been the case. Everybody who's participated over the years, they got something out of it for themselves. It wasn't money, but some kind of, maybe they want a little notoriety and a little fame, whatever, to help them piggyback into some other career. I mean, for my part, I was able to piggyback my creation of the website into a full-time gig at Sideshow, which I've been now there for 23 years.
Hmm.
So, like that's, everyone was able to do something in that respect. Um,
and we
but
love, and a lot of people started uh becoming torn people by having a great idea. There was this a
yes,
woman that had an idea that emailed us blindly and said, I
yeah,
want to do Hobbit in 5. I just want to give you the latest Hobbit news in, less than 5 minutes. And now she's a reporter for CNN. And
Hmm.
yeah,
oh, I
and
forgot that. That's so. Do we still have those somewhere? I totally forgot those. And she's a reporter for CNN now.
oh yeah, she's like
Yes.
a reporter producer. And
Simone. Simone.
Simone
And I
Biles, yeah.
bumped into her when I was at the Rings of Power press roundtable for season one. She was there in her official capacity as an entertainment reporter for the big network, and I was still there, the guy from the Wondering.net, doing his little fan interview for the website. And she's just a wonderful, wonderful journalist, very talented. And yeah, um, it's
And
it's amazing to see people get their careers to these places.
and
Really,
That
it's
is
great.
fast forward even further to the Rings of Power era, where a guy at the Varking raises his hand and says, I think you guys should have a Discord. Like, Torn could really benefit from a Discord. Let me help you set it up, because I know nothing about Discord. I don't think any of us knew anything about Discord. We've heard about it in the gaming space, but now it's the number one fantasy Lord of the Rings Discord server. We had 200,000 messages on Discord last year. Like,
yeah.
it
That's
is
pretty amazing.
so active.
There's so many examples of that happening. Ringers was an example of that.
Oh yeah,
The
someone just raised their
film
hand,
was an
right?
example of that. The game, we had a gaming section for a very long time, very active when gaming was just sort of in its infancy. So the gaming, what the hell was it called, Cliff? We had a name for it. It was a gaming section.
Oh no, you mean for video games, not for board games.
Yes, yes, video games.
For video games. I don't.
Remember? Come on, it's
Wait a minute.
20 years ago. It was only
Oh my
20
gosh.
years ago. Come
You've
on,
Well,
the
got to be
game.
kidding me.
It
this is
was the
the
digital ring. I made a graphic of the, because one
Oh,
of the
you
things
did.
one of the things I contributed to the site was website design, webmaster. Back then it was called webmaster, whatever. Um, you know, Navigation, writing all the HTML, and it wasn't even CSS back then. Um, but gaming, it's right there. What does it say?
it's right
Gaming
it's right there. Let's bring it up on
Haven,
screen.
Gaming Haven.
The gaming havens. Yes. The
Yes,
gaming havens.
and I
Yes.
made like a digital, I made like this mock-up of a digital thing.
There it is.
Oh, that's
Oh, it
so
just
old.
came up.
That's modern, by the way. That's the modern version
That's the
of the
modern
gaming.
one?
This was version
Oh,
like
wow.
2.0 or 3.0.
Yeah, this was version 2.0 of it. Oh my
Oh
God.
my goodness, great. Do you know that we also had secret published Tolkien scholars come
Yes.
on board as volunteers as
Staff.
long as their real identity would not
Yep.
be revealed to the world of academia that they came from. And that's going back to the reason why everybody was using a nickname or an avatar handle, so to
Yep.
speak. It's some of the contributors to the website lived completely secret lives in very, very, very high places in Tolkien scholarship. And they wanted to be a contributor to the fan website on the down low.
All right,
So that actually did happen with the
without
Green
naming
Books.
names. Without naming names, I've got the Green Books up right now on screen.
Mm-hmm.
What would
Yes.
be one of those all-star secret names?
You can't do that. I'm sorry.
I can't. That would
It's
reveal
not-
who
it's
it
not-
is.
It's not possible.
He
to
is,
do that
No,
without-
he
okay,
is
what's-
still
what's-
alive, and he's still very much involved in the world of publishing and scholarship. So I can't say who
Yeah.
that would be. But you're looking at one of them, and it's not Quickbeam. It's one of the others.
There's
On that
a
page.
special
Quickbeam goes,
guest.
turns off, takes off the mask.
Look at
It's
this.
been me all along.
There's a special guest section with a question mark for an icon.
Hey,
Yes.
that's a pretty classic icon. I just want everyone to know, to see what you're looking at here, just so everyone understands what you're looking at, because I don't think people realize the amount of work that went into maintaining this website, which was my work. Like, no one else did this. Each of those lines was literally handwritten HTML code. Like, it's not like this is a program.
WordPress didn't
use
exist.
I didn't use Dreamweaver like that was a thing.
That's
Like,
right.
I didn't use, this was all literally hand typed by me
Oh my God.
forever until we switched to WordPress, which was like 10 years
You
into it, I
were-
think.
You were just like the first line, you'd write 10, go to 20. On line 20, you'd say go to 30. You were writing in
Handwritten.
BASIC.
all those
You
little
were
lists
writing in
on the
BASIC.
right there, all those lists on the right, like everything handwritten. None of this is dynamic. None of it's like, oh yes, pull the title from here to here with PHP. Nope.
No
all
plugins.
handwritten.
No
My
plugins.
goodness. Wild.
Yeah.
Wild.
So that was crazy when I think about it. And I look at it now, like, and especially today. I mean, kids today don't know how good they have it, Cliff. I mean, come on.
They really don't.
I mean,
That is remarkable. Really.
a
Now,
lot of work back then.
can you explain?
Remarkable.
So we've had a lot of recent discussions about leaks and the process of leaks, and the value of leaks has changed in this year 2024. And a lot of people, maybe because we're overburdened with social media, there's so much going on. You know, it's like, should we leak? Should things leak? Should they not? And can we trust anything anyone says? Because leaks could be wrong, or leaks could be right. We don't know. But I wanted to point this out. The very first article on the OneRing.net was pictures of Hobbiton being built. The
Yeah.
second article ever on the OneRing.net was George Lucas is on rings. According to
Question mark.
E! News
With a question
Australia,
mark.
Star Wars creator George Lucas has supposedly been hired onto the fantasy epic.
Wow.
Of course that wasn't true, but
That was totally Mike. That was totally Zoanna. That was me. That wasn't me.
That's bonkers.
but
That's bonkers.
So ever since day one, it's been like, here's some real actual leaks. Here's photos of the Hobbiton set that someone rented a helicopter to go take, and no digital camera. Like, you had to pray that you got the photo
Yes.
with a film
Yes.
camera. And then the
Well,
second
no. There was digital cameras then. They were really poor quality. But in this case, yes, these were photographs from a freaking helicopter. Yes. Yeah.
And then the second post is about George Lucas has joined Lord of the Rings. Like has there always been this kind of balance of like truth and fiction, and do we validate it or do we just post it? Like,
I think in the early, let's be very clear. Complete amateurs running a website are. It's not like, oh yes, we're going to discuss this article. What is the impact of posting this article? Like none of that's happening here. It's Chris and Bill are doing the tech and the website. Erica and Mike are doing the news. Hey, Mike, here's your login to post whatever the hell you want to post. Go for it, dude. And and he posts whatever the hell he wants to post. He's not like, guys, do you think this might be not real or not? So the until until the case in which the cease and desist happened with Erica, in which we're like,
The cease and desist.
Like that. Oh, this is a big deal. Like Erica being near sets and not, like in receiving this, notice, and then that making the news, and then, like that's really when the impact of like, oh, well, it does matter what we post, right? It does matter what we do here. And so I think we still, though, I won't say the others were young and stupid. I was always young and stupid then, and I would make really bad decisions. It wasn't good to talk to me about this because it was like, George Lucas, oh, sure, post it. That's awesome. Yeah, maybe he is. Why not? I don't remember that one, by the way, George Lucas. But the I do know, like we had arrangements with I just went out of, sorry, my camera died. Anyway,
there you are.
We did early on start talking to the production team and have connections, and there were things that were just off limits. Just like, hey, please don't talk about this. I'm like, okay, that's cool. We're not going to talk about that. If you get a picture of Gollum, don't post Gollum. Okay, we'll do that. Like, we'll play. You make these trade-offs, right? Like, because you're not trying to ruin it. Like today, I keep going back to today and then. Really, you're excited about the movies just like everybody else is. You don't want to ruin it for anybody. You don't want to poo-poo it. You don't want to be negative. Back then, the internet wasn't as full of vitriol and hate as it is now. It had its part, but it was like 10%. It wasn't everybody like commenting on whatever to say something so inflammatory that they'd get more views and likes and whatever. That wasn't a thing then. Really, there was this sense of community amongst the Tolkien community as a whole, which clearly Peter Jackson and his team were part of. They weren't just people making a movie to make money. Obviously, that was part of their goal, but they were passionate Tolkien fans. They still are passionate Tolkien fans that are interested in doing this justice in the best way they could make it. And that came across. I mean, I think Lord of the Rings, the original trilogy, is going to go down in history, right? As a perfect example of someone having a vision to put the impossible on screen and doing it in a perfect way that everybody really loved. And just people can look back now and say, they don't like this and like this. Oh, I didn't like how they did this. There was slight conversations, 10% of the time on that, but everybody else was losing their freaking mind. Like that there is good people involved in this production. So, there wasn't the let's post an inflammatory thing. It was just like, I've heard this rumor. I'm going to put it up.
Let me push back on that a little bit.
Sure, go for it.
And I think Cliff can talk to this more. In fact, let me just hand it off to Cliff, because the internet's going to internet, and the internet was interneting in 1999 and 2000. And the vitriol, rather than being in our face, because social media didn't exist,
correct,
you had to type in the website that you went to. You couldn't just open an app or anything. So you had bookmarks of your favorite website and your favorite communities. The biggest community you guys mentioned earlier in the show was Harry Knowles and Ain't It Cool News. Ain't It Cool had a discussion forum called Talkback. Basically, underneath every news post was a full raunchy. It was what Twitter is now.
That's still 10%, in my opinion.
Yes, but the Cliff, you were working with McKellen.com, and explain the controversy that erupted that demanded him, Ian made a statement on his own website.
This is fascinating to me, because of so many naysayers who will still, even when we're done with this broadcast today, there will be naysayers who will come at me and say, BS, that's total BS. This didn't happen, but it really did. And I was there. And you know what? If I don't have the receipts, you still have the existence of, those old talkback forums were uncensored, unregulated,
Unmoderated.
and unmoderated in the ultimate sense of the term. And, we weren't sure exactly what was going to go on when Ian McKellen was spending as much of his time being a high-profile champion for LGBT rights as he was working on being Magneto and working on being Gandalf at the same time. He was making the biggest inroads as a lead actor into the world, the hardcore world of big intellectual property, giant blockbuster films. And his previous career was, Tony-winning actor on Amadeus and Royal Shakespeare Company. And, he had a small role in a Arnold Schwarzenegger film called The Last Action Hero. But still, nobody knew who Ian McKellen was. He was yet to become a household name. And the energy that he put into being a champion, a rights advocate for the LGBT community, which is still deeply important to him and to myself as well. He was cast as Gandalf, and there was, in that unmoderated talkback section, some vitriol, some homophobia that was so specific and so stupid. It went on and on and on. Harry Knowles didn't do anything to moderate the conversation, and it was enough that Ian McKellen felt personally compelled to write something about it. And there it is, Justin, you've got it right there, pulled up from his January 15th, year 2000 post called A Gay Gandalf. You have it right there to show the folks at home.
Yeah,
And, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, there's no doubt Harry Knowles and Ain't It Cool was where you went. Like you said, you had to type in and go to Ain't It Cool. You had to go to the article. You had to read that section.
And you had to go all the way down because they were all in sequence. You had to go all the way down the long,
you had to consume it yourself, right? And it's very different today. Is what my point being is this stupid statement, because of algorithms, going to get up here, so everybody's going to see this dumb statement today. Whereas there, you literally had to actively go to participate in these things. And it was back then, it was so important for Ian to do what he did and how he addressed this, that it actually, if you remember, with the One Ring, we were early on, we're PG, we're family friendly, right? We, in everything we do, like we are PG family friendly. We moderated the hell out of wherever we could moderate. Now, remember, there's no comments. There's no comment section necessarily. The only place we had was the forum and IRC, and both those places had an army of people moderating both of them to prevent those, idiots of the internet who really are just, 13-year-old boys saying inflammatory things because they just want to, combined with, by the way, really scary freaking people that have really bad ideas. But even then, it was still a small part of the internet that not everybody saw. If you go to Twitter today, within 10 posts, you're going to see something really stupid, really inflammatory, and really, really something that's going to boil your blood.
And it's all intellectually bankrupt. The most intellectually bankrupt, empty, and that's just people. Can I say we don't use 4-letter words, even on our Torn Tuesday show.
Even though we're family friendly, come on.
But it's just all about shit posting. That's all it is. They're just trying to be stupid and make stupid. Oh, so stupid.
Feces posting. But so Justin, to your point, it was very different than it is today. It's not that idiots didn't exist. It's just the idiots are all in our face today. back then you had to actively go to participate with the idiots, and it was important, people like Ian to address those people at the time, because sometimes addressing people just makes it worse, right? But Ian and his activism was such a, I mean, again, Ian will go down in history of pop culture, right? For this stuff. Like he is such an amazing person, and such the right person at that time in history to be transitioning society, because society still had, Cliff, remember when I came to LA to visit you?
Yes,
And even me, sheltered central Pennsylvania boy, right? Coming to LA and experiencing the first adult gay man that I'd known, like, ever, right? And hanging out with him and having a great time. And Amy and I, we had the best time, and we did some of the craziest stuff ever. That was the best trip ever.
Yeah.
And
I remember.
And the world was changing at the time, from the 80s, 90s into 2000s. Ian played a big part. Pop culture played a big part in getting us to a better place. And yeah, it's just, there is definitely a difference between what it was then, though. I like, that's why I still wish it was like, yeah, you can have your idiot corner over here. I'm just not going to go over there. Look, it's like, I'm just not going to go see your stupid stuff. I'll hang out with all the rest of the normal people in the world.
Yes. Another thing I want to mention real quick before I lose sight of it is that at the time when we began this website 25 years ago, we were not the only ones getting cease and desist letters from a major studio. The Harry Potter fandom was also at its nascent beginning.
Yes.
And that might be a bit of a redundancy, because nascent means the beginning of something. So, but there was a young 12-year-old kid, maybe she was 14 at the time, and Warner Brothers legal department was so hawkish about her little fangirl website. It wasn't so much of a different stripe from our fan website. We were trying to operate the same way that she was. She had a little Harry Potter fan page, and it became something of an ugly PR nightmare for Warner Brothers, because they had cease and desist letters sent to this little girl who was a pre-teenager just trying to have fun with the Harry Potter fan page. And we were trying to dodge that situation as well, And because it got so bad for Warner Brothers at that time, we decided to behave a little bit differently, but we never, ever, ever got, not just that one time, that Tehanu did get that cease and desist letter. But since then, the studio and our relationship with Gordon Pattison, which is something we should mention as well, and all the friends we made at New Line Cinema, we had a bit of a touch and go relationship with them all the time, while Sir Ian McKellen was giving me secrets and stuff on the side that I was trying to sneak into reporting and statements on the website and postings online without developing it to a point of earning the ire or the legal department's ire from New Line Cinema. And we danced the dance, and it was quite a high wire trick, I have to admit. It really was.
There was a lot of times.
I want to ask you guys about the changing dynamic between studios and fans. But before you answer, just to put a fine point on it, at the top of the show, I explained that I lined up for Star Wars for 6 weeks, and we made a bunch of press. I had made T-shirts with this Maul logo, this Darth Maul logo for Episode 1 in 1999. I got so many legal threats. Like Lucasfilm was gonna throw us out on the street, even though we were already on the street. They were gonna shut our website down. Absolutely, do not make those shirts. Do not sell those shirts. They're like, don't even make it. They were so threatening that they wanted this merch like removed, and we had made T-shirts that every dollar went to a children's charity for Star Wars. I just got the changing conversation around studios and fans. Lucasfilm called me up last week and said they've put this hat and those T-shirts that they were so angry about on display at Lucasfilm headquarters this week to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Phantom Menace. Because it turns out
No way.
everybody was a fan and of the stuff, even though the legal department didn't like it and they had to protect their stuff. So, like, they're celebrating the thing that they hated out of me 25 years ago. So,
wow.
So, like,
that's amazing.
You guys talk to me about like how special, like, even doing the Rings of Power Comic-Con parties and the premieres that we did in Mexico City and London and New York, like, this is unheard of when Torn started.
We had and we had the line parties, right? Like when the films were released, we had the whole line party concept, which, gosh, I wish someone could execute today. But ultimately, I think what New Line saw that we were also good stewards. And honestly, probably, I'm not going to put words in their mouth, but they felt pretty fortunate to have an army of fans that were heavily promoting their film for them for free and doing it in novel ways that they didn't have to do. And that's not saying it in any kind of like negative light. That's just the nature of Tolkien fandom, right? That was they realized when they like, oh my God, these people are going to do this anyway. They're doing it in a positive way. We can help restrain some things, right? Like, hey, we know this is a little over the line because of this reason, kids. Because I was at the time like, kid, this is a problem for this reason, right? So like, it was very novel in that way, and I think they just, they wouldn't have thought of the line party concept. They didn't think of, these different ways to promote. They didn't think of doing a gigantic, take over this particular building and theme it out like only Lord of the Rings fans could, right?
Can we explain for a quick second what a line party actually was for those people who didn't experience it?
Sure. Yeah. So back then, people went to the movie theater. It was a building that
and there was no assigned seating, so your seat was based on when you got to the theater. Like your seat was first come, first serve. So people showed up early to get in line to get a good seat, so you wouldn't be sat in the front row. You could not select what seat you were going to sit in. You couldn't even see how many tickets were left.
It was only the ArcLight Theater that started that phenomenon in Los Angeles. It was only the ArcLight at the Cinerama Dome. And that they made themselves distinct for having reserved seating. No reserved seating means that sometimes it was standing room only in an oversold movie theater, and people would wait in line for as long as they could to guarantee better seats.
So a lot of people operate with the understanding, like, here's this cool thing that could be done, but then they go through a list of things that prevent it from being done. And usually those people give up. So line party was a concept of, well, we have a ton of people. I mean, at one time, The One Ring was the 1,500th most popular website on the internet.
Wow.
So that's out of millions of websites, right? That's because people had to visit websites. And so, but it was a gigantically popular thing. And we knew we had people all over the globe that wanted to collectively go together to see the films in their theater. And so what we coordinated through a piece of programming, which, by the way, we had finally a programmer, Arathorn Matt, in the UK, who helped us program the line party system, which allowed you, like, this is what's sort of funny, like, you would go to the One Ring, be like, okay, this, and it wasn't like today where you had a map and you got, like, everything was done for you. No, you typed in AMC, Allentown, whatever. Here's the address. Here's my name. Here's my email. I would like to be the line leader for this place, right? And then we would give you a page for that. And then we would let people search in their area to be able to find a theater near them. People would duplicate freaking theaters all the time. The system had to be moderated because we would be like, people would make multiple of the same theater and be like, oh, well, we already have a line here or a line here. But you would have hundreds, some had like 1,000 people in a particular line, and they would do events. They would do their own thing, like, hey, I'm going to have a costume party. And that's all we did was sort of give that ability for the person to email their line party. By the way, not possible today with data permissions and user consent. So back then, we facilitated the ability for one person to be a coordinator for their local group and talk to them as much as they wanted to get something going. And then we would coordinate with companies, like Sideshow is a good example back then, Sideshow Weta, where we would, hey, Sideshow Weta, can you give 100 items to this group in Salt Lake City? Can you give 100 items to this group in Atlanta? Like we would do the coordination on the Wondering side to get that done. That was awesome. I mean, there was gigantic lines. Like people had an amazing time. Unfortunately, I don't know where any of that stuff is, like documentation of it, but it was cool. I remember it being super cool. It was a good time.
Well, and not only did you figure
they wouldn't
out...
go to the same show. By the way, someone asked 1,000 would go to the same show. No, they would coordinate with their theater. They'd literally work with the manager at the theater and say, hey, I've got 1,000 people in my group. Can we do special screenings? Can we do a screening for us an hour early? Like they would literally make these arrangements to do things outside of the norm, right? It was because I feel like we gave people permission to break through the door of like restriction. And that's where a lot of people get hung up. A lot of people in general just like, oh, well, there's this issue. How are we going to deal with people doing multiple lines at the same place? How are we going to do this? Like all these things, like, don't worry about it. Just do it. See what happens.
So
that's what the internet was like in the early 2000s.
That was like organizing fans before the movie came out, all the way up into the moment. And then you see it and then you go home and tell us how you who came up with the idea of ringer reviews, because Rotten Tomatoes didn't exist. There weren't many or any places where you could review a movie.
Make a form too. Yeah. Like the ringers I don't know who came up with ringers review, but again, Matt programming could program this for us. And in these cases, these were like actual, I think it was PHP at that time. I don't remember. Might not have been actually, because I think it was hard to convert. Anyway, there wasn't a system like right now you could go Typeform, right? .com and make a form that does everything for you. None of that was done. We had to build this ourselves. And so we built it with custom questions for each movie, if you guys remember, like for all the different categories. But I think we also had specific questions related to the individual films. And then you could share them with your friends and tell people about it. And then people could leave them. And guess what? Every single one was reviewed by a torn staffer for posting.
Yeah.
So like
a volunteer.
A volunteer. Yeah, I say staffer. Everyone's a volunteer. Literally, every single one had to be reviewed. I remember spending a very long time just clicking a button like, okay, no swear words. Is that enough words? Okay, yeah, sure, good. Okay, next.
Yep.
So I've got it up on screen. Fellowship of the Ring alone had 15,000 reviews. You had main categories of makeup, music, art direction, acting, cinematography, costume design, directing, special effects, editing, and screenplay. And you gave a rating out of 5 mind-blowing rings. And then the questions that you just were talking about are on the right column, the other ratings, including Elijah Wood's performance as Frodo, Sean Astin's performance as Samwise, Christopher Lee's performance as Saruman.
How much freaking work that was. I can't believe we did all that. So much work.
How would you rate the ending of the movie in regards to leading well into the next film and serving as a good ending point? That was a question. The scene at Weathertop, was it as chilling as you imagined?
That's
By the
crazy.
way,
It's
as
crazy.
someone, listen, I now having been, again, I've been working as professionally, basically in marketing and digital marketing and all that. Surveys are a science of their own. I got to go look at those questions again. How many of them were really leading? Like, like leading the person to an answer
Leading
versus,
questions.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I can't find the link to the two towers, but I've got 15,084 fellowship reviews, 9,892 Return of the King reviews. So it's probably around the same amount for two towers. So we're looking at 15, 25, 35,000 individually reviewed for content reviews. No
Crazy.
AI, no automation.
Yeah, no, definitely no AI, no
Now,
automation.
it was a labor of love.
Yeah,
And it was another opportunity to get the people who are just fans, give them an opportunity to feel like they were involved in the OneRing.net community and that they could say something unique. And it was way, 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 way before anybody
social
had
media.
the first spark of an idea of what Rotten Tomatoes might be. Really.
Yeah,
It was,
and this is
God, it was,
before YouTube exists. So there weren't any sites that had up vote down vote. Reddit didn't exist. Dig didn't exist. YouTube didn't exist. There was no social media, so no one was
Yeah.
retweeting.
I
So
don't want to give, I don't feel like it was that novel. I mean, I appreciate trying to make it that novel, but I don't think it was that novel. I think there was definitely something I was inspired by, or somebody was, to make it happen. Maybe Phantom Menace. I don't know. Was there something related? Like, again,
huh?
Star Wars did inspire a ton of what I was doing. So there had to be at that time. But again, I don't remember what I ate for breakfast, let alone what happened with Ringer reviews. So,
So
yeah,
so back on the studio relationship, which is always continuously evolving. At what point did Torn go from a website that was leaking helicopter photos to a website that could potentially leak the first image of Gollum or the Balrog, and these legal threats coming in? What happened to get to the
we didn't
point
have.
where Cliff is on set in New Zealand in Return of the King?
Oh dear.
Well, it's not. It's not. It's not. There was no legal threats. Like for us, like it was the one time Erica got the legal threat. That was it. That was the very beginning. Um, the rest of it was just mutual professionalism. I mean, that's all. You don't need to diss something if you don't. I mean, why diss something if you like? What is the benefit? That's really what society can learn right now, right? Do you really need to say that? If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all, right? That is one of those idioms that exist for a reason.
Yes.
It's because if you practice that, you're probably going to have more friends. And when you have more
Yes.
friends, more opportunities are going to present themselves, right? It's a little bit of karma, right? Don't be a dick. Excuse me, I used a four-letter word on a family-friendly show.
Don't be a
Cliff. What am I
Richard.
But don't be a Richard. And good things will happen. And what happened back then is it was funny because you could see like New Line had to balance. They didn't want to just make it be the One Ring show. Like there was others involved here. There was other ringbearer.com, like other ones, Dark Horizons,
Dark
like
Horizons,
Data
Garth.
Cool,
Even
right? Like
Yeah.
we
there
mentioned the
was other,
OneRing.com.
yeah, but there was multiple places involved that they spread things around, but really we had the most influence in the space because of some of the early scoops and everything, the direct contacts, the connections Cliff brought to the table. A lot of the going on set, that kind of stuff came from connections. And
My memory is starting to get jogged though, because I don't think Torn was invited to set. I think Cliff snuck in.
correct.
I
With
was completely
Ian
snuck
McKellen.
in. I was
With
snuck
Ian.
in.
Yes.
Uh, Indeed, the fact of the matter was that I had been working for McKellen.com long enough, and Ian knew me personally, and it was, it was a sad day when I lost my cat, who passed away, and I got an email from Sir Ian McKellen, and he said, "I am so sorry to hear about your kitty. I would like for you to come to New Zealand and visit me, and I will introduce you to Shadowfax. XOXO Ian." And that is how I got to go to New Zealand. Um, with a little bit of help to cover my airfare, because I was a struggling, starving actor at the time. Gosh, nothing has changed 25 years later. I mean, at the time, I was living out of a can of beans. And I got my butt all the way over to New Zealand, and I made friends with Sala Baker, and I made friends with the people in the casting department because of Sala Baker. Okay. And I started to meet all the stunties, the stunt performers, and the the craftspeople who were doing painting, distressing, fabrications, and carpentry. And they were all of a sudden, I was hiding in a little youth hostel, visiting the Beehive, which is the New Zealand parliamentary building in the capital city of Wellington. And at night, I was singing karaoke at the steamboat with Faramir and Eowyn and the stunt crew. It was really wild because Sala would say, "Come on, David Wenham and Miranda Otto are going to be there, and a bunch of us from our friends from Weta." That's how I met Daniel Falconer and all those wonderful people. And it was just like one series of drinks and a blazing series of songs. And that actually began the weird connection between the OneRing.net and doing public karaoke at all of our conventions and events. That became something of a family tradition. But everything that I observed involved filming Two Towers stuff. They had a very big day of filming when Gandalf was healing King Theoden. And that's when I was terrified of Grima Wormtongue, because Brad Dourif was coming over from the set, and he came into the mess hall where it was lunchtime, and the actors were, half in and half out of makeup and armor, trying to eat a sandwich. And Brad Dourif wouldn't go out of character. He was still in character during lunch, and it was just terrifying, absolutely terrifying. It was amazing. All these things that I saw during the filming were things that I had to keep secret and was not even allowed to publish a single word on the OneRing.net until a whole year later. It was a long, long wait to sit on that material, but I did write about my experiences. Um, I got to wander around Mount Victoria in the middle of the suburbs of Wellington, and I found the spot where Frodo famously says, "Get off the road." And I got to see some amazing things. Yeah, that there was
I had to do it.
that you had to, but there was just one event after another event that was a crazy whirlwind of experience for me in Wellington. And I made very, very close friends with a lot of people who were painters and craftspeople. And I got Daniel Falconer to give me a personal tour of the big Treebeard puppet, which was a 1/1 full-size Treebeard thing that was moved and activated on a chassis. And it was the one that was 1/1 scale because the actors, Dominic Monaghan and Billy Boyd, had to climb on top of it and sit in the branches of it. Um, it was just amazing to be on set. When you're looking at some of the weird little behind the scenes clips that they have on the original Blu-rays, you'll actually see me personally in the background of several of those shots because I happen to be sitting there in the room.
That's fun.
There's a famous behind the scenes clip where Dominic throws an apple. He throws an no, I think it was Vigo. Vigo tosses an apple across the green room, and I think Dominic catches the apple in his mouth. And if you're just looking closely, you'll actually see me sitting on the couch next to this thing when it happens. It's
I think we need screen
crazy.
grabs, by the way. We need screen grabs. I
Screen
don't,
grabs.
I just did a
Well,
Google search. I can't find any screen grabs. We need them. Let's go.
you gotta get them. The ultimate thing happened when Sala said, "I'm gonna go introduce you to casting tomorrow," and the casting people took one look at me and said, "You don't have your passport?" I do, sure, that I have my passport, but they said you don't have a visa, a working visa. No, I don't. I don't have a working visa to do this. And so they said, okay, we're going to do all of this under the table without paperwork, without a single piece of paper being filled out that would have left an official paper trail that an American was there, a visitor who was not allowed to work under labor laws in New Zealand, but they put me to work in armor as a Gondorian soldier, and I got all the way out of the city of Wellington to the upper hut, where they were filming nighttime scenes of Helm's Deep. It had been converted into daytime shots for Return of the King for Minas Tirith. Everything that was a nighttime location for Helm's Deep was in this rock quarry, a marble quarry, if I'm not mistaken, and by the time I arrived, they had finished all the Helm's Deep stuff and had converted the quarry into Minas Tirith. And that's why I end up in the movie standing on a wall, with the camera going right by my face as they're watching Faramir and his men leave the city gates and go out to a terrible encounter with the orcs who have already taken over Osgiliath. And it was all because of Sala. It was all because of Sala Baker that I got the chance to be an extra in The Lord of the Rings. And so that's why years later, I gave Sala Baker my couch to sleep on when he came as a return favor because he fulfilled the ultimate geek dream, the ultimate dream that I could ever have as a Lord of the Rings geek.
Yeah.
And as a return favor, I let him sleep on my couch for as long as he needed to when he moved
Abs-
here to LA. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Daniel Falconer designed this wonderful Comic-Con t-shirt we had 1 year or 2 years. Like just hand drawn. The whole thing, even the lettering. No fonts on there. Just
Yep.
Daniel Falconer. Like
That
the
was just,
generosity.
it's a special relationship. It's really, it's a trusting relationship. You know, obviously there was a lot of trust given to Cliff on that journey that he took. And
Yeah.
if you, again, you go back to just don't be, be a good person. Don't try to manipulate it to your benefit. And I think that's where the difference with the Wondering comes into play is that it's not a fiscal benefit. There's no fiscal benefit here, right? So like people are not trying to do something to earn a buck. It's you want to be respected by everybody in the community, including the people that are making the film. So it's in your best interest to play by those rules. And when the production asks you, hey, no one's seen Gollum. If you happen to get any Gollum stuff, we've been really, really working hard on this. There's like 100 people that are making Gollum come to life. It's the first time ever a character's like this in the screen. And, if you can't identify in your heart that reality, that's not BS. That's not a studio telling you BS. It's Daniel Falconer and his team and Weta working their butts off to make something novel in filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have ice in your heart that you're gonna be like, well, I'm still gonna show it anyway. That's a you problem. That's a human problem. And we didn't really have to deal with that. It was cool with the Wondering. We didn't ever have people. Of course, the discussion was always had like, oh my God, I've got it. Should we do it? Blah, blah. We had Gollum. We had images of Gollum at one point. We had the Cave Troll 2, I think. And a couple things. And we would just,
Mm-hmm.
we would respect the relationship. And sure, it wasn't perfect. I mean, I'm sure there's many times you talk to the production, be like, yeah, the Wondering did this the one time. But the respect that was maintained is the respect. I think the ultimate, and unfortunately, guys, I'm gonna have to leave soon because I gotta put my kids to bed. But the ultimate, I'm gonna get a little emotional. The ultimate respect is when they won everything at the Oscars and they shirked the establishment, right? The establishment of Hollywood, and decided we're coming to the One Ring party, right? Exactly. This, like, if there could not be any, it's the most clear example of a function of that relationship, of what it meant, right? It wasn't just a one-sided thing, fanboys excited about this, right? It was a mutual respect. What better way? They wore our pins on the during the show on their lapels. Like every single one of them, when they're getting their awards, you see the pin. Like
that we'd got made for them by Badali Jewelry.
what
And
what
they wore them
better
every
way?
year. Every year,
Yeah.
3 years in a row, they wore those pins. Yeah.
And what better way to show the mutual respect we've had through this journey than that? And you know, I don't think there's that. I can't think of any other. And granted, I'm not involved in a lot of other fandoms as intimately as this one, but I can't think of any other situations that have been that cohesive. That what's the word I'm looking for here, Cliff? Like, you know, the organism together. Like we worked together
Synchronously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just and that was the ultimate example right there.
Symbiotic. Yeah. And I agree.
Symbiotic. And I don't know if that'll ever be repeated. And that's sort of, I'm a little prideful about that. That's pretty cool. Like that's never going to happen again. There's that time, the change in culture, the change in Hollywood, the change, like all of these things coming in. And it was right after that Facebook started and MySpace, like all these, the social media world started. And so that was really a special time, a very different time than today. But it was so cool.
In 2003 or 2004, there wasn't enough bandwidth to live stream, and we didn't film the party itself. We were just there in the moment. No cell phones. You know, what's the meme?
Yeah.
Like everybody living in the moment. We were living in the moment, except me, because I'm such a tech nerd. I had one of the first digital video cameras. So I actually had video from that party.
And it was just because there was such a feeling of goodwill towards the films we were making from all of you, from all of the fans, and that we didn't want to disappoint you. We really didn't want to disappoint you. We were realizing that we were dealing with quite a few thousand people. Otherwise, we'd be starring in Mel Gibson's latest film at the moment.
Yeah, pretty amazing. Pretty amazing.
Wow.
With that, I'm going to leave on that for now. We can continue our conversation later. The whole year is the celebration of 25th, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Hey, this will be our anniversary year.
So a final before as we wrap up and as we let you go, what did you learn from those early days that you're still putting into practice as far as a fan community?
Authenticity means everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bottom line. If you are authentic, and I don't mean, I should add another word there. If you're professionally authentic, that is all that matters. You need to treat people with respect, and they will treat you with respect. Like it's these old adages, right? You know, someone said in the chat, it's what my mom always said. Yeah, exactly. Like you want to be treated a certain way, treat other people that way. That will always lead to success, in my opinion. It's the same in every industry. You treat people how you want to be treated. And I think that's, you know, we can go into a whole thing about why social media doesn't work. It's because people are not treating people like they would want to be treated. It really comes down to that. And it's on every level, corporate, professional, business, personal, everything. And so that's why it worked with the One Ring. and these entities. Because we want to be treated with respect. You want to be treated with respect. And yeah, we're authentic about it. We're authentically fanatics for Lord of the Rings and Tolkien's work. So I think that's my biggest takeaway.
Well, this is just the beginning of a series of shows that we're going to do and celebrate all year long, 25 years of the One Ring community. There's so many people in the chat room that have been saying hi on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on Twitch, that names that I haven't seen in forever, and it's so wonderful for all of you to share how you came to Torn. You know, what was the trigger point? Some people came to Torn because of Vote Bilbo. They had never heard of us until Vote Bilbo was trending on Twitter.
I had forgotten that completely. Holy
was that
crap.
the MTV Video Music Awards?
So we've got so many.
Awards?
Yes, we've got so many stories to go through about our 25 years. So this is just the start of the earliest days of how things that Chris and the team did to kind of elevate fandom in the world, online, in person, and through the studio. So I want to thank everybody for joining us on the show, and we'll do this again because we haven't even talked about the Hobbit years, and those were so much fun.
That's true. So
Crazy
much
times.
to talk about. I'm grateful for your time, Chris Parada and Justin Sewell. And before we sign off, I want to say a very special acknowledgement to all those folks out there who've been with us for 25 years. You are the mortar between the bricks. As much as we love all of our volunteers, and I can't name them all, there's so many wonderful people who've contributed so much of their personal lives and their time to help us build this community. I want to really acknowledge the folks who are with us watching this lovely show tonight, but also the friends we've lost along the way. And I want to say hello, Balin. I miss you.
Yep.
And
yep. Balin was an early staffer that we lost at one point.
yeah, so now I'm the one getting stupid and teary up. Okay, you guys, thank you to the audience. Thank you, everybody, for your love, support, and for all the good vibes. And we're going to keep on keeping on. Come on, snap out of it. Snap out of it, okay?
Hey, Balin's worth those tears, my friend. He was
the best.
amazing. Was the best. He was awesome.
You guys make this a magical community for all of us, and that's why we keep doing it week after week, because you make it a wonderful experience. So many blessings to all of our followers and community members, and a big thank you, Chris, to you for being with us on our show tonight. Good night, everybody, and good luck. We will see you next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time for another installment of Torn Tuesday. There will be mischief. There'll probably be some Green Dragon gossip, if we can get around to it, and the celebrations of our 25th anniversary will continue apace, believe me. So, until next time, buenos noches y buena suerte. Good night, everybody. Take care.
Bye, all.